When I was looking at buying an older house, I knew that there was the potential of the house containing hazardous materials. And the hazardous materials that I'm talking about are things like lead paint, asbestos, black mold, mold in general. Like, there are just so many things that come with old homes that you need to be aware of if you're looking at older homes. After I did an offer, I still was able to get an inspection. So I got a city inspector to come out, and he did a thorough inspection from top to bottom, gave me a full report of the condition of the home, which was really helpful and helped me just like learn more about like what I was getting myself into. The one downside is that since I didn't own the home yet, I couldn't take any samples out from the house. I wasn't able to test for asbestos. I wasn't able to test for lead paint. All I could do was look and see what materials might look like they have it. But that was a big downside when I was going in to close on the house, was that I didn't know what materials were in my house before I closed on the house. That was really stressful, especially in the midst of a pandemic, when we're thinking about our health constantly, and we're thinking about, at least I am, I feel like this past year I've been thinking a lot more about my health. So when I was thinking about having hazardous materials in my home and working with them, that just like really kind of freaked me out, even though I love this house. At the time, I was looking at getting a asbestos and lead paint inspector to come out and survey the house. They came out to do just a basic survey, just to walk around, look at the materials in my house, and see if any of them contained asbestos or lead paint. He didn't see any signs of asbestos, but he did see some signs of lead paint. And it was interesting actually, because he said that back in the day, lead paint was almost like a specialty, and they used it on kind of the fancier things in the house, like window trims. They used it on stair railings. They used it maybe around the door frames or any trim in your house. It was kind of like the specialty fancy paint that they used back in the day, so they used it sparingly. They only used it on certain areas of the home. But he said that lead paint isn't dangerous unless you are ingesting it, or unless you have a kid in the house who's like eating paint chips, which happens sometimes. So lead paint wasn't so concerning, but I was more concerned about asbestos because it's a material that you can't see with your naked eye, and it can be in all sorts of materials. It's commonly found in ceiling tile and pipe insulation. It can be found in your plaster walls. It can also be found on roof shingles, and in special cases it can be found in carpet padding and other materials like linoleum floor, vinyl floor. So it was a lot of ground to cover when I was looking at getting all those materials checked and tested. After he did a walkthrough, and he said he didn't see any visible signs of asbestos, which was really good. He was an expert, so he reassured me that it looked okay, but he did say that during the demolition process, and when we started to do work on the house itself, that if we came across any materials that looked like vermiculite, that we should contact him right away, and he'll come back and test for it. And I'll do a picture right here of what vermiculite looks like. Apparently vermiculite is a type of insulation that they used to use in attics. It was commonly used, and he was worried that like maybe once we started to go into the ceilings that we would find some vermiculite up there in the attic. So that was something that I was looking out for. Right when we got the house, I wanted to take down the ceiling tiles because they were like one of the first things that I wanted to go. I wanted to see what was above the ceiling. I wanted to see how much ceiling height we were gonna gain. And it was just like a really ugly thing in the house that I wanted it gone. Me and my family were able to do some demolition work on the house, and let's take a look at what we did, what the ceiling looked like afterwards, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what happened in the aftermath. So as we were taking down ceiling tiles, the ceiling looked pretty sturdy. There are a couple damaged areas that need to be addressed. It looked pretty good until we got to the bedroom in the back. The back bedroom, as we started taking down those ceiling tiles, there were like pieces of plaster that were crumbling. It was really gross actually. There was like stuff falling from the ceiling on us when we were taking down the ceiling tiles, and then when we actually looked up at the ceiling and we looked at the lath up there, we saw little like pebble things that kind of looked like vermiculite. Immediately when we took down those ceiling tiles, I freaked out and I was like, oh my god, we have to call the inspector and have him come back to test. He came back and he tested for multiple materials in the house. That wasn't just the vermiculite that he thought was there. He also tested some of our plaster walls, and he tested the ceiling tiles that we had already taken out. Now this is another lesson that I learned doing demo and DIY projects. We were wearing just like surgical masks when we were doing this work, and I kind of just assumed that like, oh, he didn't see any visible signs of asbestos, so it's all good. But I wish that I waited a little bit to not take down the ceiling tiles until we got certain materials tested. During that time, I was just thinking that, oh, we might have been exposed to asbestos. That's just not something that you want in your life at all. All the tests came back negative, which was awesome, and I was super happy about that. One, because that means that we're all healthy and fine, and two, that also meant that I didn't have to blow my renovation budget on getting rid of some damn asbestos. Anyway, I'm glad I didn't have to do that. But after that whole asbestos scare, after that experience of doing the demo work and then coming across a fishy material, I thought that like, oh, that could happen again in the future. So I bought this ProLab asbestos kit. I highly recommend this. It's super easy and is not as expensive as having a professional to come out to your house. $40 for the whole package. And basically what's in it is, it comes with a first class envelope for you to send your samples back in. And then it comes with a surgical mask and some gloves, and then a couple sample bags. So sample A, sample B. So you could take 2 samples of 2 different materials, put them in this bag, put it in the envelope, send it back to them, and they get the test results back to you within 5 business days normally. And if you want to rush it, you can pay extra for that if you want the results sooner than that. But $40 for that whole kit and just to have like some peace of mind was totally worth it in my opinion. I also invested in another, maybe I'm going overboard, y'all might think I'm crazy, but I'm very health conscious, especially when it comes to doing work on an old house. I bought this 3M face respirator. The model number is 7501, and basically what it does is these 2 pink filters, I had to purchase these separately, but they filter out any dust or any like small particles that you don't really want to be breathing in. And since I have asthma, this was really helpful for me to have when I'm doing demo work and when I'm doing work on the house in general. It just makes me feel safer when I'm wearing this. Not that we have asbestos, but there are other particles and stuff that you don't necessarily want in your lungs, and this really just helps filter all those out. These filters last for about 6 months. So far, they've been doing me a really good job and I really like them. For me, since I own this property now and I'm responsible for everything with this house, I needed to know what materials were in my walls. I needed to know what materials were in the floors, just to have peace of mind and also know moving forward if I decide to do more work. Just knowing what the DNA makeup is, that sounds so weird, but knowing what the DNA makeup is of your house. That was just something that was really important to me, so I did take quite a bit of time to invest in that before we did any more work. As you can see, the ceilings look really good. Once we can scrape off all that plaster and put new drywall up, the ceiling height is going to be so much higher, and it's just going to be really good.